struggling and I'm feeling this thing, like how would you say that
I got you.
work through
I got you.
something like that?
A few things. I'm going to keep it short so you guys could go. I understand. Number one, if it's affordable, get counseling. If it's affordable, meaning I understand that counseling costs money. I understand it's not an opportunity for everybody, but if it's affordable. And then there's many opportunities people don't know about that you can ask for some type of, benefits where you may be able to get some free counseling. If that's not a possibility, try to visit somebody in the church that is a counselor, or maybe train to sit down with you both to help you guys navigate through those conversations. Is that clear? If that's a possibility. Number two, this is what I've learned. Vulnerability produces vulnerability. And if you're in a relationship with someone who wants to collaborate with you, values the relationship, but they just genuinely struggle, if you're vulnerable, and instead of blaming them or pointing the finger at them or using you statements, meaning like, you did this to me, you said this, you did this. Like if you can try not to use the word you and use the word I, which we call as counselors I statements. I first want to say, hey, is it a good time to talk? I just wanted to share my heart with you about a conversation, about a situation. If that person agrees that it's a good time to talk, meaning that they have capacity, then you guys can move forward, and that'll show up differently in everybody's situation. When we sit down, you can even coat the conversation with, I'm going to be vulnerable with you, and I'm going to express how I feel. You hear what I said? How I feel. And you can ask them to be a listening ear, and you can ask them not to take anything personal. And if at any moment they get triggered during the conversation, let's create a safe word, and we'll pause and see where the disconnect is, or repeat back to me what you heard me say so that I can further clarify what I did not mean if something I said triggers you. Let there be agreement there, and then I will move forward to the next step. Keep everything about I statements. So for example, let's just use me and Will. If we're talking, and I would say, hey, Will, we were playing basketball outside. I felt left out. I felt rejected. I felt not chosen. I felt hurt. And he could say, okay, where did these feelings come from? Now, this is very important for you to know yourself, because your first instinct is going to say, when you did this. But the reality is, there are certain things that trigger you. And if you don't have, this is the point of this, if you don't have enough self-awareness of who you are and where you struggle, all you know to do is blame other people. It's easier to just blame somebody because your body is looking for a target, a category, versus looking deep and saying, you know what, Will, that's a good question. You could say, all my life, I felt like this as far as I can remember since I was a little kid. And I do believe it traces back to not having my father in my life. And so the wound that was created since I was a kid, every time I don't get picked up, every time someone does not choose me, every time, maybe, I don't get picked for this, I don't get voted for this, whatever you could think about, you're keeping it about you. I have yet to say Will did anything. See what I'm saying? But that takes a lot of self-awareness, and you got to take your time when you talk. You can't be trying to talk fast because your brain's going to go to, because you did it. See, again, it's literally not personal. You see what I'm saying? But how you view and interpret reality, especially if you don't know where your wounds are, everything's going to feel personal. And so when I communicate to him and say, yeah, this is something I genuinely struggle with, if he's emotionally mature, if he knows how to have some level of conflict, constant critical dialogue where he can navigate through conflict and relationships, he would say, yo, I apologize for making you feel that way. And that takes a lot of accountability for people to apologize for something they don't even feel like they did. But that's why it's helpful to be in a relationship with someone who, even though they don't feel like they did something wrong, apologizing maybe for your peace. You see what I'm saying? And now I'll just put it back on me. Like, something I do is I'll say, hey, how can I show up for you in a way where you don't feel this way? But first, I want to let you know, I wasn't trying to be hurtful by doing this. And I would explain my behavior so that they can have clarity for the future. But I would ask them, like, hey, how can we work together? Is there a word that I can say? Is there a safe word that I can say? And I know this sounds so draining, but no, guys, this is really the price you pay to have healthier communication. I would ask, real interesting questions like, how can I create a safe place for you? But then it puts the ball in your court to know yourself and what you need. I would ask you, what do you need to hear? And then I would just tell you reminders. Like, I just want to remind you, I really love you. I appreciate you. I care about you. And it's never my intention to hurt you. You see what I'm saying? So it really takes, like, all of what I just said, it's like a roadmap. It's always going to feel like this is too much. But that's why you have to be with somebody who's willing to do that. Like, some people aren't willing to, and that's okay. They're not there in their walk. They're not there in their life. They don't have that emotional intelligence. This is really not the norm. I'm a counselor. If I wasn't trained, I'd still be everybody going back and forth. No one's hearing each other. Everybody's misunderstanding each other. Like, this is a real thing. And I would say, again, counseling helps. Having someone help you guys navigate through conversation is huge. That's number one. But if that's not possible, you guys have to have real talks, not when you guys are angry and not when you guys are low capacity. You could even say, hey, tonight, would you be open to talking about this? I wouldn't suggest talking late at night. Naturally, people are genuinely tired. But I would schedule time and always ask them, is this a good time to talk? And then, this sounds like a lot, but I create guidelines for conscious, critical dialogue, hard conversations, meaning I say things like, okay, we're not going to go here. We're going to pause when this happens. We're going to be quick to forgive. We're going to really make sure we don't accuse. Like, we set rules for the conversation before we even go in. And then lastly, for everybody here, sounds spiritual, but pray. Say, hey, let's pray before we have this talk. Your awareness of God being in the room before any hard conversation really helps. It really does. And so then I would be honest, there's this thing called HALT. It's a therapeutic strategy that we do. If you are hungry, angry, been feeling lonely, or tired, that is your number one sign that you do not have capacity to have the conversation. So don't take on anything when you know you're hungry. You've been angry, you need some space. You've been feeling lonely. Don't react or speak when you've been feeling tired. Like, you have to be honest with people and say, hey, I love you. And even this may be hard to do when you're in this space. I love you, but not right now. Reassure them we could have the talk. We could do that later. But you got to be honest with yourself. So if you're hungry, go eat. If you've been angry, take some space. If you're mature, go pray. If you've been feeling lonely, you see what I'm saying? Communicate, but not out of pointing the finger. And also enjoy your community when they're around you. Meaning, when you're low on oxytocin, your body doesn't realize you need to be around people, but you naturally draw away. Fight that. But if you're tired, take a nap. That's probably the most spiritual thing you could do, is take a nap. And so it's a roadmap. This is going to be too much to people who are not whole. That's what this is right here. This video is not for people. Whoever watches this says this is too much. That means you have work to do if you ever want to be in a mature relationship. I'm sorry, but communication is the lifeline to relationships. So if you're not willing to do the work, you probably don't value your relationships very well, or you're comfortable and familiar with strife. And that's the number one killer to all inspiration: your spiritual life, your mental health, your physical life. And I value my people And that's what keeps me encouraged to do the hard work. And guess what? We got to stay forgiving when, after all I just said, doesn't even happen. We go in, we planned it right, and it's like, well, here we go. You're clocked out, and now I'm clocked out. Now we're going. Listen, be quick to forgive. But this is why it helps to be in relationships with people who are willing to fight for the relationship. This is not for people who are not willing to fight for relationships.